morning, everyone. Okay, that was
Good morning.
indicative of the times we're in. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Leah Webb. I am a community organizer with Citizen Action of New York, and I am also a city council representative in Binghamton, New York. And I'll also be your moderator for today's press conference. We are here today to release a new report on the state budget entitled Race Matters, the Impact of the 2010-2011 Executive Budget Proposal. It was produced by the Public Policy and Education Fund, which is a research and education organization concerned with issues of importance to low to moderate income New Yorkers. We'll outline in the report in a moment, but first I'd like to introduce some of the folks who actually worked on putting this report together. Bob Cohen, who is actually the report author, also the policy director from the Public Policy and Education Fund, is here and available to answer any questions on the report. And also we have some key people here representing different community groups, the NAACP, we have college students, representatives of youth bureaus, human service agencies, and anyone else? EOC, and any other folks that
Higher education.
Higher education.
And community voices heard.
Community
voices heard.
Voices heard. Okay, I hope I said that right and didn't sound crazy. So I just want to kind of outline the report that we're releasing today. In discussing the Race Matters report, we need to first take a snapshot of the condition of New Yorkers of color. While of course many New Yorkers of all races enjoy great success, in fact, both the nation and our state are led by accomplished people of color. The majority of people of color in our state are simply not making it in this harsh economy. For all too many people of color, achieving the American dream seems more distant than ever, and disparities based on race are getting wider and wider. To cite only a couple statistics from the report, as the first half of 2009, the so-called official unemployment rate for New Yorkers of all races and ethnic groups stood at around 9%, but for black men, it was 18%, a jump of almost 10% in 1 year. The real unemployment rate, when you include those who have stopped looking for work because there's no point in it, and those involuntarily working part-time, was a stunning 27% as of mid-2009 for black men and around 18% for Hispanics. In this report, the Public Policy and Education Fund looked at how the executive budget treated several critical areas of the highest concern to New Yorkers of color and to immigrants in the areas of education, higher education, healthcare, human services, and criminal justice, just to see how the impact of the budget falls on this community. We found that while there are some instances where the budget takes positive steps to address racial and ethnic inequality, on the balance, the spending cuts and deferred spending in the budget would make racial and ethnic disparities even worse. Contrary to how sometimes the media and some public officials portray it, we have choices. Despite the state's $9 billion deficit, there are several revenue alternatives that the legislature and the governor can undertake to restore the cuts that most hurt the communities of colors and community of color and low-income people in the state. So I would now like to introduce Karen Scharf, who is the Executive Director of Citizen Action of New York.
Thank you, Leah. So the report goes through a number of different major sections of the budget. In the majority of the areas we examined, the spending plans in the executive budget would increase racial and ethnic inequality. We want to talk about a few of the examples of the inequalities that are created. And I want to also just flag as we get into these that in most of these cases, we have the exact same problems with the Senate budget resolution that was passed yesterday. And we're very concerned to see the Senate coming down in support of some of the worst proposals that the governor had. So first I want to start with education, where we have a $1.4 billion school aid cut, the largest in state history, which disproportionately harms students of color and schools and communities of color, as well as those with limited English proficiency, undermining the goals of the landmark 2007 law passed in response to the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit. We have a number of speakers on the education cuts. I want to start with Marina Marcoux-O'Malley from the Alliance for Quality Education. Marina?
Thank you, Karen. I'm Marina Marcoux-O'Malley, with the policy analyst with the Alliance for Quality Education. As Karen just said, the executive proposal includes a $1.4 billion cut to education, money taken away from our schools and our school children. These proposed cuts hurt high needs districts. This means that school districts that need the most help in ensuring that every student has access to their constitutional granted right to a sound basic education and to the opportunity to learn will lose the most teachers, the most programs, the most access. About half of the proposed cuts will be borne by students of color. Let me give you a few examples of the kinds of losses our high needs districts will see. The average cut per classroom will be about $12,000 compared to a cut of $2,000 to $4,000 for wealthier school districts, where the proportion of students of color is generally much lower. About 80% of school districts expect to see increases in class sizes, according to a survey just put out yesterday by the Council of School Superintendents. The same survey says that about 40% of school districts will cut back on extra help provided to students, something that will disproportionately hurt high needs district communities. And on top of all this, about 64% of the school districts expect increases in their property taxes to make up for what they will lose. And generally, higher tax increases are most common in the poorest regions. This is what the high needs school districts will stand to lose. All New York State children are relying on the State Assembly and Senate to fight against these cuts and protect the future of our state. The future of our communities is in their hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. And next we're going to hear from Paul Webster from NYSUT. Paul?
Good morning. My name is Paul Webster. I'm the Director of Community Outreach for NYSUT, representing some 605,000 teachers, educators, healthcare, and higher education professionals across the state. We're going to hear in a minute from our UUP President Phil Smith, but I'm going to talk about the impact on communities of color in K-12. You know, President Obama said that education is the great equalizer in this nation. But what this budget is going to do is really undermine the foundation of education for so many students of color to get additional resources and to have the opportunity to go to college and have success in life. As Marina was talking about some of the cuts to some of the high needs districts across the state, in Buffalo, we will lose approximately 1,100 teachers and educators if this budget cut goes through, 1/3 of their professional force. Albany, 113 teachers and educators. Yonkers, up to 1,000 teachers and educators. Syracuse, 211 teachers and educators. Brentwood, which has the largest Hispanic population of students outside of New York City, with some 15,000 Hispanic students. Their number today came in at 525 teachers and educators that will be lost. How do you close the gaps? How do you achieve success by cutting out the foundation for students of color? The Race Matters report is a very important report to go with the New York State Association of Black and Puerto Rican Legislators People's Budget, because it really depicts a stark future for communities of color across the state if our state legislators and our governor do not do more to provide resources. So we're standing in unison with Citizen Action and our other advocates and allies, calling on the legislature and the governor to restore the resources. There are many budget proposals out there that can be successful, and we're just asking the legislators and the government to have a heart and just remember that these communities are the most vulnerable and will be impacted and cause even greater pain in the future.
Thank you, Paul. I think a lot of times when people hear these big budget numbers, it's not clear what it really means. And I think that Paul's comments really make clear that $1.4 billion in cuts is not just a big number. It's close to 15,000 teachers statewide, and even that sounds like kind of okay. State's a big state. In each and every district that Paul talked about, these are very, very severe cuts that are going to significantly harm the education of our kids, and that's why both in this report board and all of our work that all of us here are doing, we're working so strongly to make sure that the governor's budget doesn't stand, and the Senate budget that passed yesterday doesn't stand, because the Senate came out in favor of these 1.4 billion of cuts, which was, you know, we are all here outraged about, and because these cuts are not just numbers on a piece of paper. This is the future of kids in our state that we're talking about, kids' ability to actually get any kind of a decent education.